What's a rule that was implemented somewhere that massively backfired? My city has issues with loud bikes vehicles. So as a deterrent, the city put up decibel meters that displayed how loud your engine is, similar to those signs that read your speed and display it to you. But instead of deterring anyone, people would pull up to these signs and rev the heck out of their engines to see who could get the highest decibel count. The city took the counters down within a week. I work in manufacturing and we get paid piece rate, so the more I run the more I get paid. We also have a base hourly pay rate of $10 HR, so whichever pays more, the hourly or the piece rate, is what we get paid for the day. On bad days sometimes they bump us to $12 HR for the day, and when we train new people we get paid $15 HR to compensate for having to slow down or stop our machines to teach the new people. The big boss, my boss, came in last week. Now he used to work on the line like I do now, but you can tell he's living comfortably in his corporate life and has forgotten some of the bad parts of this job. He told my boss that we are to no longer receive training pay because, by his logic, if we are working with someone we should be making more than $15 HR. Anyway, and these past 3 weeks or so we have been doing a lot of training. So a few of us got together at the end of the day and agreed, if they aren't paying us, we won't train people. We will teach the new people enough to make us some money and leave the training to the designated trainers. 2 people split between 15 or so new hires, but they make $17.50 HR. The policy lasted 4 days. Buddy of mine told me about a happy hour promotion a bar ran close to his campus. Apparently the special was something stupid like 50-cent beers that lasted until the first person went to the bathroom. As he tells it, the first few weeks went without incident, but once it got more popular, people were going to extreme lengths to not be that guy, including wearing adult diapers. Once people tried to covertly pee in corners and trash cans, the bar cancelled the promotion. Hawaii had a rat problem following the influx of European visitors. Rat stowaways. It was a big problem because many species of Hawaiian birds are only found in Hawaii and had never had predators. The rats were destroying the native bird population, so they decided to bring in mongooses. Yes, that's the plural, to kill the rats. Problem is that rats are nocturnal and mongooses are diurnal. They never see one another. Both are now happily feasting on whatever is left of the native birds. Fun fact, this actually inspires the use of Alolan Rattata and Yungoos in Pokemon Sun and Moon. At my old job, some people abused lunch, so they made a few of them text in when they started and finished lunch. One guy specifically would text the start time, place he got food, his order in detail, the address, price, etc. Even when he bought a snack while out. That stopped a week later. Worked for a marketing firm that often locked you out of the building if you weren't back in your cubicle by the second your break was up. They revoked your break the next day as punishment. This is not legal here in New York State. They got into a lot of trouble. I once saw a true crime show that was about a kidnapping turned murder case. 2 guys had abducted another guy for his car, I think, and had him in the trunk. The perps started talking, and one of them said, you know, if we get caught, the sentence of kidnapping is the same as murder. So, we might as well kill this guy. That way, we have less chance of getting caught. The chilling part was that the poor guy in the trunk probably heard every word, comma. When Domino's said all pizzas would be delivered in 30 minutes or less or your pizza was free, all the delivery drivers kept getting in car accidents to get your pizza to you on time, so it wouldn't come out of their paycheck. It was a short-lived venture. School I go to has a rule that says if you come late 3 times, you get an unjustified absence, which lowers your grade quite a bit. So if someone is late they pretty much always skip class so they can get an absence that can be justified by simply signing it. Also, the infamous Barbados vs Grenada soccer match. The organizers of the 1994 Caribbean Tournament Cup had a rather odd change to the rules for extra time. If a game was still drawn at full time, it would go to extra time but the first goal scored would win. This is perfectly normal. The golden goal rule. What was different is that they ruled that winning this way would count as having won by 2 goals for the purpose of tournament qualification, instead of just 1. Barbados went into a match against Grenada needing 2 goals to qualify for the main tournament. If they lost, or won by only 1 goal, Grenada would qualify instead. Under the regular rule, this would mean that if the match went to extra time, there would basically be no point Barbados playing because even if they scored, they would only win by 1 goal and not qualify, but the 2-point rule would motivate them to play on. Sound good? Well, you might be able to guess what happened. The match looked like it was about to end with Barbados 2-1 Grenada, a win for Barbados, but not the 2 goals they needed. So Barbados deliberately scored an own goal in the last few minutes of the match, making the score 2-2, hoping to trigger extra time and a chance to score the magic 2 value goal. The Grenada players quickly realized they could do the same, score an own goal to make the match 3-2 to Barbados, which would have Barbados winning by only 1 goal, so Grenada would qualify. But the Barbados players realized that too, and so they began to defend Grenada's goal. So for the last 7 minutes of the match, Grenada were trying to score a goal in either net, since scoring a goal against Barbados would give them 3-2 and they would win the match, and scoring in their own goal would make it 3-2 to Barbados, so they would lose the match but win the qualification, and Barbados were defending both. Amazingly, Barbados did actually manage to do so, successfully defending themselves while half of their team were defending Grenada's goal against Grenada, and then scored the golden goal in extra time and qualified. Middle school wanted to create a trash-free environment, so they removed the trash cans from the parking lots, halls, and cafeteria. Then just told the kids to toss your trash when you get home or in a classroom. The amount of litter skyrocketed overnight. After a week or so they brought back the cans. A salon I worked at one day decided to drug test the hairstylists. Out of 12 stylists, 11 failed. The manager texted everybody the next day and told them to come to work. I worked at Macy's one Christmas and found out the reason why you can never find anyone at the registers is because they don't allow employees to stand at the register because it's intimidating. I can't tell you how many times I gave up trying to purchase something there because I couldn't find anyone to ring me up. I used to work at a semiconductor lab, looking for defects in computer chips with an electron microscope. The work is complicated, precise, and easy to frick up. One wrong move, and the sample is toast, a lip, lost in processing, as they say in the biz. Management got really angry at lips and started clamping down really hard on technicians who did them. If you fricked up a sample, you got written up. The problem is that not all jobs are created equal. Some jobs are really easy, and other jobs are really hard and risky. So, the smart technicians started taking all of the easy jobs, and the idiots who didn't know any better started taking all of the hard jobs. The lip rate then went up, and it created a really contentious atmosphere in the lab of people screwing each other over to take the easiest jobs. Morale plummeted, and people started leaving to go to other groups that weren't crap sandwiches. This drove lab output down even further. My last job got a new facility head. She didn't like the fact that we wore shorts in a kitchen in the summer when temps would get over 100. She made a new rule that shorts weren't allowed, but skirts were fine. My supervisor told me I didn't have the stones to wear a skirt to work. I am a male. Guess who showed up to work the best day in a skirt? The new rule lasted about a month before the new leader got tired of cross-dressers running around the facility. Once I started it, all the other guys started wearing skirts as well. I do not miss that place. A hotel I used to work for decided they were having an alcohol-free holiday party. This didn't sit well with the people who'd been working there for years and were accustomed to a full bar at the party. The staff parking lot ended up being full of people drinking in their cars trying to get a good buzz to carry them through the party, and most people ended up getting way drunker than they would have, so the party was a crap show. Friend had a non-alcohol wedding. Nearly everyone took ecstasy instead. Complete opposite of the sober event the parents wanted. You have to eat whatever you touch was a rule in my kindergarten, which led to all the children touching all the food to call dibs on it. Washington state made it mandatory for schools to drop their room temperatures to save on electricity. The result? Teachers brought their own heaters into their offices and use of electricity increased. I once worked at a pizza place. Our manager got tired of the colorful language one day and decided to enact a swear jar. She said she'd charge us a quarter for every time we cussed. My co-worker Jay was the first person to get penalized. She said, "You owe a quarter." He popped a dollar bill in and said, "Take a freaking dollar, freaking B." It didn't last long. Ahahaha. I worked somewhere that did a swear jar. I'd just buy my swears for the day. When I quit they gave me all the money in the jar because most of it was mine anyway. What's the most ridiculous rule in your place of work? Many years ago I was a vacuum cleaner salesman. There were songs about this particular brand of vacuum cleaner and how awesome it was. Every morning, we had to sing these songs as a group. In fairness, it was a pretty quality item. It's okay man, you're free now. You don't need to sing the song anymore. I'm a teacher, so I have a million stupid rules I have to follow, but the worst one is that my performance evaluation is based on student improvement on the STEM literacy test. I teach woodshop. At my old job, HR held a meeting to tell us that there was too much swearing on the sales floor. Someone raised their hand and pointed out that swearing is very common in our industry and that is the way that our customers speak. HR later sent out a memo explaining that swearing should be limited to conversations with clients. It was amazing. If you are stuck in traffic on the way to work, you must email the CEO. Phone calls and texts are not permitted, only email. I'd get that one in writing and send it to the corporate insurer. I used to work at a place in which my boss implemented a no more than 2 glasses a day water policy. What a C. I ignored this rule and complained directly to our CEO and the matter ended later that day. What was weird though was the majority of people actually followed the rule and some even shopped me up to HR about breaking the rules. I left not long after that because not only was my boss a bellend, but if my colleagues were going to HR over me drinking water, then I obviously couldn't trust them. But they love being superior because dehydration delirium. Woo. Had a workplace time our bathroom breaks and deduct them from our allotted 15-minute breaks or lunch. We had to go see the office manager to get a key to open the restroom. As soon as we left his office he would start a timer. When you got back he would stop the timer and tell you how much time you needed to deduct from your lunch or next break. They watched our breaks like a hawk. Also, if you made a mistake they would stand over you and time you while you fixed it and deduct that from your lunch or breaks. You couldn't bring anything that smells for lunch and they had no way of heating anything up. I worked out my contract and split. Business casual dress code even when I work at home. They Skype me to check. The VP of our company just held a mass meeting to tell all of us we can't have pictures or plants or food or any form of non-office supplied object on our desk. Tons of co-workers have family pictures or their kids' finger paintings pinned up on the cubicle walls. All that has to be removed. People were pee. That is the first sign you should leave. If they need to exert that control over you, it means other things are failing. My dad told me this one a while back. He used to work for a PR firm. The way he described the office environment, think The Office but in the 1980s. The company hired a corporate efficiency specialist to come in and improve things. She came in and implemented all kinds of rules, which seemed to follow some sort of caste system. Her philosophy was, the higher your office rank, the more perks you get. Her idea of perks: number of pictures you are allowed in your cubicle, whether you are allowed to have a potted plant or not. Coffee mugs were only allowed to senior employees. Others had to use paper cups. Being allowed to leave the office for lunch was also considered a perk. Needless to say, a coup soon followed, and she was tossed out on her hinny. That doesn't sound like it makes anything efficient. Dress code policy is just dumb at my work. Different positions have different requirements, even though we all work in the same office. My favorite rule though is the one on shorts. We can wear shorts on Fridays between Memorial Day and Labor Day. However, the shorts can't have pockets on the side. It was written to discourage ratty cargo shorts, but the way in which it is written allows me to wear gym shorts, so I do. Once worked at a place where some minibus decided that since UPS trucks don't turn left, we shouldn't either. I don't know or care how well that worked out for UPS, but this was a goddamned ambulance company with a 911 contract. I will tell if UPS trucks turn left or not, or if that is beneficial for them or not, and frankly I don't care. The point is that minibus thought they did, and that was the reasoning he gave. He was an idiot. I did not stay there long. Not my current job, but I used to work for some crazy people. You had to stand in a specific area while eating so they could see you on the camera. Don't talk to customers longer than 3 minutes unless you're making a big sale. Even then, keep it short. Answer the phone within 2 rings. Keep the conversation to less than 30 seconds. You can't talk to your co-workers outside of work. You can't talk to your co-workers while at work, even if there was not a single customer in the store. I'm sure there's more I just can't think of right now. Old job of mine in a warehouse. Our stations were pretty far apart, so when we listened to music we'd all usually have our own stuff playing. Not a problem since you could barely hear the neighbor's music. Well, the CEO didn't like hearing multiple songs when walking through the warehouse. He made a rule that we all either had to listen to the same music, or none at all. I'd put on the same song but everyone started 15 seconds apart. We got a new vacation policy where you could take unlimited time off. When he announced it, we looked at the big boss like he had a dong growing out of his forehead, all the while he assured us that if we wanted vacation, to take it. Really, a little bit afterward, he changed it to discretionary time off, meaning that if your boss approved it, it was okay. Then it changed to 160 hours should be the max, and if you go over 200 hours then you probably don't need to work here. I once needed a pen. Figured this was a reasonable ask. Went to the supply closet on my floor, which was locked. Asked the floor's admin. She told me to go to the main supply room in the basement. Went to the basement and explained my situation of needing a pen. They told me all requests for supplies must be approved by my department head. Problem is, being new, I'd never met my department head. She also worked in San Francisco. I worked in Milwaukee, so I needed to send an email both introducing myself and asking her if I had permission to get a pen from the supply closet. This is my favorite one so far. That's so ridiculous in every way. If you had to take a leave on Monday or Friday so that you have an extended weekend of 3 days instead of 2, it was counted as 3 days leave, counting in Saturday and Sunday. Deal with that. If you are 1 minute late, it is a tardy. If you take a half day, nothing goes on your record. I was told to just take a half day if you are going to be late because they straight up fire you for tardies. Also, if you clock out early, it is a tardy. If you have to go to the doctor on lunch break and it is going to take an hour and 10 minutes, take the rest of the day off. Weird. Fireman. Our risk management department decided long ago that poles were too risky for us, so we use the stairs. We have poles. Anyway, now the newest rule is no free weights, as in no free weights to work out. Stay fit. Go into burning high rise, absolutely. Walk around the station carrying 40-pound dumbbells. Too risky. I feel you. My FD just got some workout equipment, rowing machine and bike. It had been delayed due to liability concerns, but we actually have a fire pole that we use. It's all very confusing. We aren't allowed to wear jackets unless they are purchased from the resort gift shop with the hotel name logo on it. They are $50 plus and we don't get reimbursed, but it's the price you pay to stay warm in the cold months. McDonald's did this to us when I worked there. They paid half, but they were still like $50-$60 for a shitty fleece. I just wore my regular jacket and nobody said a thing. Former job. There was trouble when I officially moved desks and my new desk had a phone with call display. Apparently call display phones were allowed for people at a certain pay level. Your pay level also governed the height of your cubicle walls. My manager's solution was to promote me. Another former job. We were mandated to work on an engineering related research project outside of work hours, because a responsible engineer always gives back to the engineering community. I could live with that. However, your project had to be related to the company's business. We have to do all of our paperwork at least 3 times. There is a copy of it in our personal folders, a copy online, and a copy in our store folders. Not only does it waste time and paper, but forgetting to do one has gotten people fired. They did the other 2 identical pieces of paperwork confirming that yes, they did take out the trash and yes, They did check the store voicemail, but how dare they forget to do the third piece of identical paperwork. Our weekly visits from corporate revolve around whether or not we've all done this paperwork. It's so redundant. My workplace doesn't let you use the word problems. Instead, we have to say challenges if something is wrong, as a problem is a negative word, and challenges promotes the fact that there is room to fix said problem. I'd love to have a boss tell me my drinking has become a challenge. Former job at a law office, one of the partners sent an email to the entire staff that employees were not allowed to gossip in the building. What was everyone gossiping about, you ask? Oh, said partner was divorcing his wife and sleeping with one of the associate attorneys in the firm. But, don't gossip. All the extra toilet paper in the building has to stay in a single closet where it can be overseen by the toilet paper queen. I heard her shrieking the other day when she discovered someone had hoarded one spare roll of toilet paper upstairs so the people who work upstairs wouldn't have to walk down multiple flights of stairs when the toilet paper ran out. I hope Toilet Paper Queen is actually her title. I used to work for the now long defunct books, movies, and music store Media Play. Just one of the 285 reasons that poorly run business ran into the ground was the tardy attendance policy. If you were literally 1 second late clocking in, even hours before the store opened, it was a really big deal. You'd not only be formally written up, but lectured like a child, oftentimes berated even if you were tardy 3 times. Bye bye. However, if you no-showed and then called 2 hours later saying you were sick, okay, thank you, feel better. This trained everyone to just take a sick day instead of being half a second late to work. I can't tell you how many times you'd see a co-worker screeching into the parking lot before work after fighting traffic from a wreck or whatever, noticing it was 8:01, and then slowly driving off to go home and feign being sick. This was particularly upsetting when it was a pull-down stock week when we needed every hand on deck but had unusually early shifts. When I was in the military, I saw a buddy of mine sitting outside crying. I went and consoled him best as I could. Apparently he was just depressed and unhappy. After he was feeling a bit better, I went to go and find someone to tell them what was happening. They knew. In fact, he had been crying so much lately that they had instituted a no crying at your desk policy, which is why he was outside. Dear God, what the frick? If we want to take a full 5-day week off, we need to use 2 vacation days, 1 personal, and 2 more vacation days. Can never use 3 vacation days straight. Something similar here. We can't use our sick time until we use 3 vacation days. So, let's say I have no vacation hours, but get really sick. I can't use PTO. Our sick time is essentially useless. Can't have my hands in my pockets. I drive valet. The company handbook says you're never allowed to back up, ever. You absolutely cannot do the job without reverse. It's impossible. It's in there because of liability and our insurance policy. This way it can always be the valet's fault if an accident occurs ever. Malicious compliance. We can't ask others if they want to come grab a coffee in the break room. Just develop a subtle nod that means the same thing. No accusing other staff members of being witches. Yeah, it happened, so we had to make a rule. I run a hostel in Uganda, which is exactly the kind of rule a witch would create. It's not like this anymore, but for a while they attempted to have a dress code. Guys had to wear collared shirts, but Hawaiian style shirts were totally acceptable. You could not wear jean shorts, but jean overall shorts were okay. I got sent home one day because my shorts weren't fingertip length. We were tech support. No one ever saw us. That was the best part. I'm picturing a bunch of IT workers in Hawaiian shirts and overalls, and I love it. I worked as a call receiver. We never saw a customer. We were only on the phones with them. Rule: your hair must only be a natural color. I dyed my hair the same exact color that someone from a different shift had. I was reprimanded. I told them that if the rule is not enforced for everyone, they couldn't single me out. Their reasoning for letting the other person have that color but not me. Mine was my real hair, dyed an unnatural color. Hers was a weave that could be changed very easily. Really? Then why hasn't she been asked to change her hair? Because that crap is expensive. They gave up trying to convince me they were in the right. I had a boss who didn't like the outrageous color I had in my hair. I'm a natural redhead. I work in retail and we have on-call shifts. Your name will be listed on the schedule for a certain time as a call-in, so you have to call 1 hour before your shift to figure out if they need you to work for the day. For example, you would be listed as on call for 2 PM and wouldn't know until 1 PM if you were working that evening. If you don't call in, it's considered not showing up for a shift, but there's no extra pay for the shift whether they need you or not. So for 3 days of the week, I don't know if I have to work or not. Can't make any solid plans to do anything except call my work and ask if they need me. I can't imagine having children or elderly that need taking care of because it would be such a hassle to arrange care for them just an hour before having to work. This is actually illegal. I actually won money from a lawsuit against Victoria's Secret and their on-call policy. I used to work for a large bank. We had an attendance policy that was so complicated it actually created an incentive for employees to take an entire day off rather than be tardy too often. My high school had that too. If you were late enough to miss first period, you got a cut, which was a detention. Even being late to first period 3 times counted as a cut, which was another detention. An absence was just an absence. No cuts, no detentions. Redditors who grew up with strict parents. What was the craziest rule or punishment you had to deal with? We weren't allowed to have food upstairs, but I had food wrappers in my trash can, so they searched my whole room, ripping clothes off hangers, throwing stuff out of drawers, etc. And for 3 months I wasn't allowed in my room for anything unless accompanied by one of them. I slept on the couch. The word disgusting was banned and could have been considered just as bad as saying frick. We weren't allowed to close doors unless we were in the bathroom. We weren't allowed to watch Cartoon Network because it was garbage. They actually put a parental lock on Cartoon Network. The worst punishment was one time they decided that we were such bad kids, my sister was like 14, I was 12ish, that they took everything we owned and bagged it up into garbage bags and made us carry them out to a burn pile, and they burnt everything we owned. All of my childhood memorabilia, pictures, clothes, diaries, everything. Burnt it all. Fricked up. When it was done burning the next day or so later, my sister and I looked through the ashes and all that was left were 2 silver rings of hers that we cleaned off and kept. Crazy crap. When I was in 1st grade, I had a writing homework assignment. My dad used to be weird about me erasing, because he wanted me to do it right the first time. I ended up erasing a lot on this homework and my dad took the paper from me, ripped it in half and told me to start over. Turns out it was the last sheet of paper in the entire house, and I don't remember why, but for some reason we couldn't go and buy more paper that night. So ironically, I ended having to completely erase an old homework assignment in order to have a sheet of paper to start over on. I'm 22 now and still give him crap about this. As one should. I once got beaten and locked in the basement because my hands were literally not large enough to play a certain piano piece. I couldn't play an octave separation yet. Before you ask, yes, I am Asian. French guy here. I did violin, my brother piano. Although we enjoyed it at first, our love for music died out when passion was met with fear. I was not allowed to use public restrooms. I ruined our Disney trip because of how many times we had to go back to the hotel not on site when I was 6. And I quite honestly had accidents when I was far too old to do so because my parents had my teachers reporting bathroom use to them too. There was no place I could safely use the restroom other than home without getting into trouble. Finally, I got to use public restrooms without punishment when I freaking went to college. No, I'm not kidding. But I got pretty good at hiding restroom use in high school because the high school refused to report it to my parents. Why did none of these teachers spot the abuse? How? My parents once grounded me for 2 years for getting a B on my report card. Took everything out of my room besides the bed, and I wasn't allowed to do anything with friends. A year and a half into it, I asked if I could be ungrounded, and at that point they had actually forgotten what they grounded me for, but refused because I must have done something bad if they grounded me. Also, they refused to let me stay up past 8 PM, even in high school. When you're being punished without reason, it's not punishment anymore. When I was in preschool, 1993, there was a girl who wasn't allowed to play outside because she'd get her dress dirty. Thankfully the staff always had a change of play clothes for her because F that. I brought play clothes to my cousin's graduation party. I said hi to all the adults and chatted for a while, then put my shorts and t-shirt on to defend my badminton title. I am 33. When I was a kid, I had dysgraphia, but my parents didn't know that. So I used to take time to do my homework. My mom would threaten to throw my homework out the window if I wasn't done by a certain time. I lived in an apartment block and this window was into a service shaft. I too had undiagnosed dysgraphia for years. I remember spending hours redoing my homework because it wasn't neat enough. When I was in elementary school at about 6 years old, I used to have accidents because my bladder was too small. My mom would punch me in the bladder when I got home to make me pee myself and make fun of me when I did. I still have issues and it turns out that my bladder and uterus is fricked up from a genetic disease. That is awful, but now you have a cool secret handshake to show your mom every time you visit her in her underfunded old age home. No talking at the dinner table other than the occasional "do you want some more of this" or "please pass the salt." We could not talk about anything at all. No small idle chat was allowed. First time you did it, you got yelled at. Second time was a whooping and then sent to your room until the next day without the rest of your meal. I make it a point now with my kids to chat up a storm each and every meal. You could earn a full-on ass whooping for uttering any of the following: "shut up," but accusing someone of lying for any reason. We were not permitted to use the words liar, liar, lying. Instead we had to say "that's not the truth," or "that doesn't sound right," or any other phraseology that wasn't some iteration of the word lie. I can relate. My siblings and I weren't able to say boring without my mom freaking out. Not that crazy, just something that stuck with me, since I generally consider my parents to be good caring parents, mainly just overprotective. But when I was 15, I got really depressed and kinda shut down academically and socially. My parents didn't know what to do with me. At one point, they ran out of ways to ground me and my life was consequently made up of just going to school and coming home and lying motionless in bed, staring at the wall or sleeping. But my grades still hadn't improved, so they thought denying me of privacy solitude by taking away my bedroom door would persuade me to get my grades up. Spoiler alert, it didn't, lol. My stepmom and dad did this too. I was into choir and loved music and they would take things that brought me any joy. As the eldest son of a Southern Baptist preacher, I was held to some high standards, being seen and not heard, and that my every action was a reflection of my father as a leader to his congregation. I found music to be a great outlet, but of course any non-Christian music was not allowed and immediately destroyed upon discovery. Spare the rod, spoil the child was a mantra ingrained in my daily life. Once I was into my teens and spankings with stretched out coat hangers was no longer enough to be considered punishment due to the lack of tears. My father moved on to shaving my head. Nothing like the constant reminder of how unworthy one is once their physical source of personal identity is forcibly removed. Frick, this thread sucks. Oh, one I can answer. My mother is an honest to God narcissist. I graduated from high school early at 16 and didn't go to college immediately, so I worked a part-time job while all my friends went to school. Anyways, when all my friends graduated high school we celebrated by going to the movies. My friend's mom dropped us off and another friend's father was going to be picking us up. My mom was very upset at me going to the movies anyways since it wasn't going to be over until after 9 PM. By bedtime at the time. Anyways, finally she lets me go on the condition that friend's dad gets me home by 10 PM. My friend's father ran into late night construction on the way home with me and several other friends in the van, and the closer it got to 10 PM the more I started freaking out, telling everyone I was going to be in huge trouble if I didn't get home like right now. My friend's father assured me he would speak to my mom and all would be fine. I was the first BB dropped off because I was panicking so severely. The moment the van pulls into the driveway my mom comes barreling out of the house telling me she was going to kick my ass for being late and keeping her up. My friend's dad tries to calm her down and separate her from hitting me. That is when she realizes I'm chewing gum. Now my mother hated gum. Said the only reason you would ever chew gum was to hide something. So naturally she makes the assumption that I was late chewing gum because I was busy sucking my friend's dad's dong. Yup, that was the only explanation in her mind. She grounded me for 12 weeks, an entire summer. I wasn't allowed to have a phone, cell phone, TV or books the entire summer. Every morning my mom would take the cable box, home phone handset, and keyboard to make sure I couldn't do anything. Needless to say, my friends never invited me anywhere again in fear that my mom would call the cops and accuse me of sucking their dad's dong. She also used to report my car stolen if I didn't call her back when I was in college. Please tell me you two no longer see each other or speak. I refused to greet my sister's new boyfriend with more than a sup, so later that night my mom Hulk smashed my laptop, double fist style. I dealt with a narcissistic, abusive mother. Most of my punishments weren't huge because I was a really good kid, but on my 18th birthday, because I asked for gas money the day before, the first time ever, she took mine and her car keys with her to work, and took the shed key, no garage, so I couldn't even ride my bike, and left a note on the kitchen table saying happy 18th. Now you're an adult, so get out of my house. I spent my birthday alone, trapped, and miserable. All over $10. My mother went crazy and left the house in tears on my 18th birthday because I wanted to go out with my friends. She didn't come home till after 2 AM. Bit late, but one day, the news said school might be closed for a cold day, like a snow day, but for when it's cold enough your exposed skin freezes in 10 minutes. My mom demanded I start walking to school, or she'd report me to the cops as truant. We argued. TV said school started late that day. I decided to go anyways, the being better than the arguing. She then decided I was to stay home for her to call the cops. I shoved past her, which she yelled at me was assault, and then locked me out of the house. Halfway to school, I was told the school was closed. I had to call my dad to be let in the house again. That day I promised myself I'd leave home as soon as possible. I've stayed halfway across the country from my mom ever since. No TV, not as a punishment, just no TV, ever, because apparently it lets the devil in. The second I, as the last kid, moved out, they started watching TV all the time. As punishment, my dad would make us face a corner, stand on one leg and keep both arms straight up in the air for a certain length of time. If our leg or arms went down, he'd double the time. Sometimes he'd give you a surprise visit from his belt or shoe if he was particularly pee. At least I grew up to have fantastic balance. That's called a stress position. They did it to a certain prison's inmates. There was an entire scandal. When I was 13, no dating until uni. When I was 18, no dating until I finish uni. When I am 20 and about to graduate, no dating unless it's someone I choose for you. WTH. In a year or two it will be why haven't you found a good person to give you kids yet? I want grandchildren. My brother stepped on the PS2 controller cable, sending the PS2 flying off the shelf and smashing it all over the floor. As punishment my dad whipped me across the back a few times, and when I tried to run away he threw some rocks at me. The whip marks stayed on my back for a few weeks. My grandmother was a retired English teacher. One day, I called my brother stupid. I was 4 or so. She filled me in on her rule that, if I couldn't spell stupid but I called someone stupid, then it was really me that was stupid. Thus, I should never call someone a name that I couldn't spell. So in my 4-year-old head, rather than avoid name calling, realized that I did know how to spell dumb, so that word must be permitted. I spent the rest of the day overusing the word dumb and she wasn't quite sure what to do at that point. Mum gave me a black eye one night when I came home from a friend's birthday party at a skate rink. She made me tell people that I fell down and got hit in the eye by one of the wheels on a skate. I was 12. It was because I forgot to put away the dishes before I left. She also regularly broke remote controls, throwing them at me, would slam my doors open so hard the doorknobs would smash through the drywall, stole the allowance my granddad gave me, no matter where I hid it, and recently ripped a pair of my headphones out of my ears while I was using them and broke them by repeatedly whipping me in the face with them, then followed it up by punching me a few times in the face. The last instance was about 4-5 months ago. I moved out and she regularly contacts me demanding money. I really hope you aren't giving her money. People who grew up with strict parents, what was their most unreasonable rule? Not my parents, but I had a friend who got it pretty bad. If you want to play for 1 hour, you have to also practice piano for 1 hour. These and other such rules were posted on his bedroom door. My mom was very strict about the ratings of movies and video games. One year for Christmas a relative gave me a copy of Star Wars: Shadows of the Empire for the Nintendo 64. It was a T14 rated game and I wouldn't be turning 13 for another 4 weeks. My mom had my dad drive me to Toys R Us to return the game. We walked into the store and over to the games and he had me pick out an E for everyone rated game. We proceeded to check out and as we went to the car he handed me not only the new game but the game we were supposed to have returned to buy it as well and told me not to let her catch me playing it. That guy deserves a high five. I was called at a friend's house at 11 PM at night because I left 2 t-shirts slung over the chair in my room versus hanging them in my closet. I had to go back to my house and then I was grounded for a week. Upon getting home, my mother had gone through my entire room and tossed every item out of my dresser. She claimed they were messily put in the dresser. Fun stuff. I wasn't allowed to say I died on Mario. I lost one of my chances to succeed. Son, your grandpa lost one of his chances to succeed. I had a friend who wasn't allowed to say the word stupid and tried to report me to the teacher when I said it. Teacher yelled at me and then told me it was okay in private and not to say it around that one kid. Nice guy, though, just had a helicopter mom. My kids are allowed to say stupid but we always taught them that it was never okay using it referring to a person. My oldest is 10 and when my youngest daughter heard her call something stupid she ran to tell on her older sister. My wife and I cracked up laughing when the little one couldn't understand why she hadn't gotten her sister in trouble. My dad didn't believe in periods, and when I cried that I needed feminine products gave me food stamps to buy them. I was humiliated. My parents were pretty slack on everything except one thing. No video games console ever, and no online games on the computer because that's how you get virus and make the computer run slow. So I was playing my morpg when they were sleeping, in a hidden file, in a file, in another file, in another file and I was changing the appearance of every file icon. And this is how you reverse your child's sleep schedule. My mom's curfew was 7 PM and her brother's was 12 AM. Her brother was about 2 years younger than her and my granddaddy's logic was that girls get themselves into more trouble than boys. My poor mother only ever attended church functions for fun until she graduated from high school. My stepmom decided that I was using too much shampoo. She would get a little medicine cup before my shower and pour the designated amount into it. It wasn't ever enough because I had hair down to my butt. I also wasn't allowed to use conditioner. Screw her. I also wasn't allowed to use conditioner. I got a paper route when I was 12 years old. The very first thing I bought with my earnings was a giant bottle of conditioner. I wasn't allowed to cross any streets until middle school. Thus, my best friends were the ones who lived on the same block as me. When I was in 5th grade I wrote some stuff in my diary about masturbating, and like a month later, my mom went through all my stuff. She would randomly go in my room, tear it apart, I'd always get in trouble for something, and then I'd have to clean up the mess and be grounded for whatever amount she felt like that day. So anyway, she found that diary entry. She picks me up from school and won't talk to me. I get home, my door was removed from my room, that diary entry was taped on the wall, and I was threatened with a belt if I didn't answer all her invasive questions. Fricked up. Way to give a kid a complex about their sexuality. Mom hits me with kitchen utensils and yells that I am not allowed to put my hands up to defend myself from her strikes. I was not allowed to watch Pokemon because it taught evolution haha. My brother couldn't watch it because Pokemon equals pocket monsters, which is a sneaky word for demons. I am not allowed to do the following: use the washing machine, wash the dishes, pull the weeds, vacuum outside of my room. I must ask to use the vacuum. I can't cook a meal. I can't have the remote. I get instructed on how to use the microwave that I've been using for years, and if I ask where we are going I get told out and I have to dress in jeans, a shirt and running shoes no matter how hot because he doesn't like shorts, and no jacket no matter how cold. We could not listen to music with guitars in it. I will never forget the day my brother was listening to Sabbath Bloody Sabbath and my father took the radio and threw it through the window. Spent my childhood listening to Richard Marx and Michael Bolton. Thanks Dad. Currently on holiday in Japan. Have to message every hour to update them on what I am doing. Create a script that sends the same 5 messages in a random order every hour. We couldn't go sledding during the winter or any other season, obviously, because my mom was a neat freak and didn't want snow slogged into the garage. So, no snow playing of any kind, really. Never built a snowman. Did go sledding when I was an adult. It's pretty great. All of our clothes in our closet had to be arranged by color, descending in order by shade. So, for example, midnight blue at one end of the blue section, and Tahil blue at the other. There was a system in place for colors, too, so if the yellows were by the purples, for example, there'd be heck to pay. No shoes on in the house under any circumstances. Was super uncomfortable when my brother's friend, who had prosthetic legs and always had shoes on, came over and didn't take his shoes off. Mom got really mad and confronted him. No Legos or puzzles allowed, as they make messes and look like disorder. I freaking love puzzles as an adult. One of my favorite hobbies. 30 minutes of internet time a day and 99% of the time, that was supervised, as in mom looking over my shoulder and commenting on conversations. We had WebV, RIP, and when they weren't home, they would literally lock the keyboard in a toolbox. My sis and I could never have friends stay over because the house is a mess. No amount of cleaning satisfied mom, because the real reason was she wanted to be able to fight with my dad at will. For every minute I was late coming in from curfew, I got grounded a week. I once spent 10 weeks grounded due to a sobriety checkpoint. Whoa, for me it was every minute late as a minute earlier the next day. Mine is logical, yours is insane. I had to write essays on TV shows that I wanted to watch, in order to have them unblocked by the parental controls. I remember writing a riveting piece on the educational and cultural benefit of Disney's That's So Raven. Also, I wasn't allowed to watch PG-13 movies, even after turning 13. Wasn't allowed to rest my head on my hand with my elbow on any table while there was also food on that table. If my parents found out I was going too fast in my car, small town, so other parents would snitch on me pretty regularly for going 10 over. I had to pay my parents speeding tickets. Also, they would make me pay for the whole family's phone bill if I texted a boy. By the time I moved out at 17, I had given them well over $1,000 in punishment money earned at the Sonic drive-in. I was not allowed to talk to boys. One Christmas Eve day, I was doing last-minute shopping in the downtown of our little town. I ran into 2 male friends from my German class and we talked for several minutes and wished each other a Merry Christmas. Oh, I was 15 at the time. My older sister drove by and saw me, told my parents I was hanging out with boys. When I walked in the house both my parents were waiting and the yelling began. Some Christmas Eve. Sneeyike. Indian parents. I could stay at a sleepover until 2 AM, but couldn't actually sleep at that person's house lol. I was from a large family and discipline was very strict. If myself or one of my siblings broke one of the major rules, my parents would hold a truth session. All the children would be brought to my dad's study where the guilty party would be given an opportunity to confess. If nobody came forward, we would be hit in turn in order of ascending age. The eldest 4 were hit with a sewer rod while, in deference to their age, the youngest ones would get a whack of a bamboo stick. A sewer rod is basically a 4-foot long flexible rubber rod, around an inch thick and with a metal cap. It would leave the most remarkable welts. Horrendous things really. Anyway, this would continue until someone admitted their guilt. At that point they would receive the blows that everyone else had received to that point. So that was awful. I fully acknowledge that. I'm under no illusions. However, that wasn't the actual unreasonableness. No, the unreasonable part was that the person who caused the truth session didn't always receive the accrued punishment owed for having their siblings beaten. Sometimes they could just be let go, making their siblings hate them for causing pain to them. There'd be no explanation. The study door would be opened and we'd all be told to leave. That meant you could be rewarded for holding out and avoiding the punishment you'd definitely get if you admitted it at the beginning. My parents now tell fun stories about how when I was a child and I'd done something wrong, I'd always begin with, "Let me tell you my story." How they chortle at my childish phrasing while I recall the terror that such an approach was meant to stave off. Have a friend who isn't allowed to go out if he's already had too much fun this weekend. That's the only reason. They think he'll become corrupted if he has too much fun and that he won't know how to work. He's in college. No sneezing or yawning. BW 1230 PM and 430 PM. If true, then we can safely assume your parents were mental. Females of the family must cook and clean on holidays while males watch TV. Must bus males' plates every night. No visiting friends' houses. No friends over at our house all the way through high school. Hair cannot be cut at or above shoulder. 7 PM bedtime. Not curfew. Bedtime. Through junior high. Strictly enforced. Needless to say, I rebelled strong and hard. There were a lot, but the most ridiculous one to me was they didn't want me volunteering during high school. I was visiting the elderly and they said it was too dangerous to be around strangers like that and the time was taking away from my studies. Most extracurriculars I wanted to do they had a huge problem with, but it didn't hit me how absurd it was until it was about senior citizens. The ironic thing is those things look great on college applications. I wasn't allowed to shrug or say I don't know if anything tech related went wrong. It was assumed that I broke it on purpose, even if the only reason anyone knew it was broken is because I was trying to fix it. Birthday parties were a no-go. Christmas was a no-go. Any party whatsoever was a no-go. My father was very strict. I wasn't allowed to have alone time with my mother. He beat the crap out of me constantly, but the oddest thing that still bugs me to this day is that he would burn all my things as punishment. And I get it. Seeing my toys and valuables burning sucked, and I probably learned some lessons. But he not only burned toys, he would burn everything. Every year or so for school we would go to Meijer and buy me new school clothes and shoes. He would also burn those, like sometimes days after he bought them. At 8 years old I remember thinking, you now have to buy me more clothes. But that wasn't the point, I suppose. He once took me to the Palace of Auburn Hills in Detroit to see the Globetrotters one year, and during the night he bought me a Globetrotters basketball and jersey. We had a fun night. The very next day, I had left something on the floor in my room and his punishment, among other things, was to burn the basketball and jersey he bought for like $150 less than 24 hours earlier. It just never made sense to me. My friends would joke about it all throughout middle and high school. Seriously, one of the psychopathic answers on here. Sorry you had to live with that. This blew my mind. I was not allowed to wear makeup or shave until 16. My mom was controlling about food. Everything was kept track of. I had to be in marching band in order to get my permit. I had a job, but even if I worked second shift, which I did, and came home at 11, I would have to clear the plates from the table for the dinner that they ate. If I asked to hang out with a friend in the presence of said friend, the answer was automatically no. I was only allowed to do things if the friend or their parent was paying for it. The straw that broke the camel's back, and ultimately made me move out at 16, was that I had to live like a boarder. Showers cost $5. A load of laundry was $1 for washer, $1 for dryer. Telephone time cost $25 per minute. No trends or passing fads. Pokemon, banned. Barbies, banned. Beanie Babies, banned. PlayStation Gamma Boys, banned. Anything particularly fashionable or popular regardless of actual merit was met with derision, and we'd be mocked for even suggesting interest. We were achingly frumpy kids with interests and cultural references, or lack thereof, that isolated us from our peers, and they wondered why each of us were bullied. Pretty sure the verdict is in on Barbie and PlayStation. They aren't fads. My parents were slack. My best friend's parents were so strict, she would escape to my house for freedom. 12th grade, prom. Her parents allowed her to go to prom but said she wasn't allowed to dance. We all went to prom. had fun dancing, until she saw her parents standing at the back watching. She then moved out for university. After her first year, she came home to work for the summer. She had been on her own for a year and supporting herself, and her parents gave her a 9 p.m. curfew. She spent a lot of time at my house that summer. She was married by the next summer and didn't have to deal with it. Individuality was almost a cardinal sin in my parents' house. You wear what they like. You eat what they like. You do what they like. You do not under any circumstances act like a human being with hopes, dreams, and opinions. No dating till marriage. My mom was insanely controlling about food. Weird rules were in place, like 1 slice of lunch meat per sandwich. No one but her was allowed to cook. She'd make one giant batch of spaghetti or something and we'd have leftovers for days, so she only had to make dinner twice a week. She did not work or anything, just didn't like cooking every day. Breakfast was cold cereal and you'd only be allowed a small bowl with just enough milk to moisten it. Occasionally she'd bake something she called corn toasties, which was simply cornbread baked in a sheet pan. She'd cut them into squares and fill the freezer with them, and we could have one of those for breakfast as an alternative. Once when I was 14, I bought a pack of hot dogs at the store, snuck them home, and lit the grill. I was almost done cooking them when she came out screaming about fire hazards and swatted the plate out of my hand. She had been making spaghetti. What an ungrateful little bastard I was. So then she orders a pizza for the rest of my family, wraps individual servings of spaghetti in freezer paper, and puts them away. She tells me that I will be eating nothing else until it's all gone. Took about 2 months to choke it all down. Went without eating a lot of days. I was also grounded for over a year, but I sure learned a lot about consequences. What zero tolerance school stories do you have? My sister almost got suspended in the 3rd grade cause my mom put a plastic butter knife in her lunch one day. I forget why she needed it for her lunch. One of the lunchroom aides spotted her using it and sent her right to the principal's office, and they called my mom to come in. A 3rd grader stabs an adult with a plastic knife. Knife breaks. Adult looks at them confused. This was 10 years ago. My cousin, 1 grade lower than me, got into a fight at school. Zero tolerance policy says they are both suspended. Attached to this policy is if a student is involved in 3 separate fights within their time at the high school, then they were expelled. Within 2 weeks of my cousin returning, one of the guy's friends started a fight with my cousin. They are both suspended. A few weeks after he returns again, another friend of the original kid starts a fight with my cousin. In each situation the other kid threw the first punch. Zero tolerance each time means it didn't matter. That is how children outsmarted the zero tolerance policy and why my cousin graduated from a private high school. That's really smart of them and really fricked up. Frick zero tolerance. When I was in year 10, grade 9 for Americans, we all had to line up to go into the dinner hall. For whatever reason they put the menu with what they were serving that day at the front of the queue, so I walked to the front to read it. As I was walking back, a tiny year 8 kid, grade 7, shouted over to me, "Hey, stop trying to cut in the line, you donghead." I just told him to frick off and mind his own business, as it's the kind of school where if it looks like you're giving in to a younger kid without fighting your corner, you won't hear the end of it. Then the little crap rugby tackled me, but he was too small to knock me over, so I just kind of stood there awkwardly as he tried to kick me. After a while I'd had enough, so I grabbed him and picked him up, put him against the wall where he was standing before, and turned to walk off. The headmaster was standing right in front of me and he'd been watching the whole thing. We both got sent to the reflection room, which is like a higher form of detention. The only time I got in trouble was for trying to walk away from a fight started by someone half my size who I probably could have hurt if I had wanted to. Thanks, headmaster. Now I know in the future that I should just deck the little bastard instead of being gentle, because the punishment is going to be the same anyway. In 9th grade I was in a class that had some disruptive students that always caused problems for the teacher. During the semester they were forced to sit at the desks nearest the teacher's desk. I wasn't a bad student at all, but for some reason I was forced to sit in the front of them. I was P. One day we had a substitute and my entire row gave the sub a very hard time. When the actual teacher came back, she forced everyone in my room to detention. Many other students protested for me, even the bad students in my row. She said, "That's too bad. From that day forward I helped the bad students to not get caught whenever they fricked with her. Good for you, man. I always liked to mess with teachers if they were unfair to their students. Not me, but my niece once had to do a school project about the Voyagers. We lived in a relevant area, in the computer lab. So she innocently typed in furtraders.com orgnet whatever. Of course it was P. She got suspended. We had to do a project on pirates for grade 12 history. Could not get research done due to piracy coming up on the school filter. Left a BB gun in my friend's car in high school. Security saw it and he got kicked out. I talked to the principal, who was our friend and mentor, about reversing the decision or taking the punishment myself. He was just as upset as me, but he kept explaining that his hands were tied. He finally just looked me in the eye and said zero tolerance. Actually, he used my name afterward, so I knew the conversation was over. My friend graduated from an alternative school. That's fricked up. I once got suspended because a security guard found an unloaded airsoft pistol in the back of my truck. Let me be clear, by pistol, I mean those ones made of clear plastic, and by back of my truck I mean behind the passenger seat of a crew cab with tinted rear windows. This security guard is really doing his job, eh? Marking these suburban high schools safe for everyone. Also, I had a friend who got suspended for bringing a metal butter knife to school with his lunch. A knife is a knife, people. There can be no tolerance for weapons or logic and reasoning. 2 people got suspended for fighting off school property with each other. Also, not my school, but a local school, and it made the news. A girl with Down syndrome or an intellectual disability said a popular athlete assaulted her in the library, and they made the girl write an apology letter to him, only to find out later he did do it, many times. They made the girl write an apology letter to him. That is so sad. I hope she eventually got justice. When I was in 10th grade, I was eating dinner with my family and my dad accidentally spills his beer all over my shirt. No big deal, so I go upstairs and take my shirt off for the night. The next day while I'm getting dressed I see that I'm out of clean shirts to wear, so without thinking I grabbed the shirt from last night and put it on, eat breakfast and get out the door. The day was pretty normal, until I was called up to the front office. I wasn't really a bad kid or anything, so I wasn't too worried. Once I arrived, the principal informed me that another student told him that I smelled like beer and assumed that I had been drinking. I told the principal about what happened last night and assured him that I had not been drinking. He tells me that it still counts as bringing alcohol onto school grounds, and for that I was suspended. We have a zero tolerance no fighting rule in our gymnasium. Like, even if you lay down on your back while you're getting jumped you'll still get expelled. Happened to get into a fight with a guy I honestly could easily beat down, but since I really don't want any trouble with the school or at home I just blocked my head until the principal came by. After a minute of discussion he told me that I'd get suspended for 2 weeks even when I told him that I didn't hit back. So I did what any teenager would have done, I think. I got loose from the principal and beat the other guy down and took my punishment. If you're gonna do the time, you might as well do the crime. My school had a zero tolerance policy on cell phones and electronic items. Obviously you can't convince a high schooler to not bring a phone with him/her, so the administrators would do raids occasionally and bust some phones each time. They didn't give it back until the end of the year. I don't think that is really legal for them to keep your cell phone for the rest of the year. In high school I got suspended for 1 week because I had a bottle of prescription painkillers in my locker. I was taking them because I got a serious knee injury while playing for the school baseball team. I also got kicked off the team and wasn't allowed to participate in any sports at school for the last 2.5 years of my high school education. The principal explained to me that they had a zero tolerance policy to drugs of any kind. Worst part is, I could have went to at least 10 different lockers in school and shown him drugs in there, but he wouldn't let me because I shouldn't be snitching on my peers. Screw you, Principal Vickers. I mean, usually you're supposed to give the nurse your meds, but I'm still on your side. They went overboard. I went to a very crappy school district. I mean, this place is scum in so many ways. My little brother has ADD and mild autism. He's a very nice kid and always has been. I mean, he opens doors for everyone and compliments people he doesn't even know. Anyways, there was a kid in his grade who was the biggest butthole. He was mean to everyone. even the poor kids who were his friends. He always picked on my brother and his friends, calling them retarded and everything else. One day, we get a code red. Everyone is stuck in their classrooms and there had been a recent trend in girls fighting in the bathroom, so everyone assumed that was what was going on. Number: I wish it had been a girl fight. I get called down to the office about an hour later. My brother and his best friend were walking to class. They were at the top of one of the stairwells when Butthole McButthert came up behind them and shoved my brother down the stairs as hard as he could. My brother tried to grab onto the brick wall to stop himself from falling and ended up dragging his hand down the bricks, ripping his hand apart. He still has the scar. He hit his face on the tile at the bottom after doing several head over heels rolls down the stairs. His nose and lip were bleeding and his back was hurt so bad they thought he had broken it. He ended up going to the emergency room. Fast forward a week later. He's back in school and the principal calls him to her office. This B. I don't know how this B was ever allowed to work at a school. She made my brother shake hands with Butthole and makeup. She said the alternative was both of them getting suspended because she did not believe my brother did nothing to provoke him from pushing him down the stairs, despite 2 witnesses telling her what happened. My brother has been bitter over that ever since. Also, when my mom found out he had to shake Butthole McButthort's hand, she went to the school and confronted the principal. The principal told my mom, well, maybe if your son wasn't annoying it wouldn't have happened. My mom pulled her across the desk and a secretary had to pull her off of her. I like your mom. There wasn't really a zero tolerance thing back then, but school was over. I was starting my walk home and a friend runs by and drops his bag by me and yells to me to carry it. We were going to play hockey after school, so whatever. Nothing of circumstance came of it. I never heard where he was even running to. Next day teacher is all pee off. I go in to see the principal and turns out my friend was trying to pick a fight. Mind you, apparently all he ever did was run after someone but never even got close to them. Not even the same block. There was no fight. This also happened all outside of the school. So naturally my friend was suspended for a week and remaining days in that week. And because I carried his bag I was an accomplice in the fight, which never happened. I was suspended for the remaining days in that week. There was like 2-3 day vacation for me that I was happy to take. It was all crappy rainy days but I was happy to leave. So you got punished for a fight that never happened that you didn't know about. Not quite zero tolerance, but my friend's sister grew up in quite a foul-mouthed household, with older siblings. Her first words were son of a b, blurted out emphatically for no apparent reason at the breakfast table. And when she was quite young, 1st grade, some boy pushed her on the playground. She called him a boob. He broke down and cried. Told the teacher she had to eat lunch on the psychologist's office the rest of the year because she was a danger to the other students or something, and her mother had to come in. Mother told them that if they thought that was the most pressing issue they had, she thought they should look harder. Didn't go to the meeting. She's a badass in general. The boob got in no trouble for pushing her because he told on her first. She could have easily beaten the crap out of him. I'm in Britain where zero tolerance isn't really a thing. I think the closest thing we got to zero tolerance were when teachers would hold an entire class back in detention, including the ones who were not disruptive and were doing the work. It seriously peed me off when I was at school. It happened mostly during years 7, 8 and 9. I'd have been 11 when I started year 7, which is the first year of secondary school in Britain. Teachers at my school did it because it was to punish the disruptive students. They wanted the innocent to blame the guilty and ostracize them so they wouldn't do it again. I know a girl who got suspended for having cough drops in the backseat of her car. I don't have a story, but I was blamed for a fight that happened on a weekend that wasn't even off school grounds. This kid who doesn't even go to my school, who has a name really similar to mine, got in a fight with some kid at my school. So naturally they thought it was me. Thankfully a couple days earlier my friend told me about said fight, so I was able to provide some background information to get myself out of blame. But they took me to a friggin' room with the school cop and some other people and they were treating this like a massive deal. It's a fight that happened on the weekend at a scatter park, and one of the kids doesn't even go to the same school. Why are you meddling in on their business? My school had a zero hat policy because of gangs. I got suspended for wearing a coonskin hat. I guess I was representing the Davy Crockett gang. Everyone knows the Crockett's run the east side of this city. Bully punches kid in the face. Kid doesn't fight back because he knows he'll get suspended for fighting. Kid lets the bully hit him until a teacher gets there. Teacher gets there and gives a detention to the bully and the bullied. My stepbrother and his friends all got suspended for pretending to have lightsabers at recess. No, not plastic ones. Literally their imagination. WTF. A boy bullied me for almost an entire year. Called me fat. That kind of thing. I said if he kept talking to me I was going to kill him. I got in school suspension for 2 days. He got a talk from the guidance counselor about how you shouldn't bully girls you have a crush on. Chewing gum. Rather, looking like I was chewing gum because my jaw was sore from having rubber bands on my braces. Ended up in an isolation room for the rest of the day and then got suspended for a week. Looking back now I realize how stupid most grade school suspensions are because it doesn't really teach you anything other than the fact that you get vacation for looking like you're breaking a silly rule. You've been spotted by the doggo of studying like this video for good grades for the next 2 years. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video. Or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.